Chapter 17. Chad. It was the first time I'd appreciated the things Taylor had to do around the shop. He was part janitor, part salesperson, and consultant, as an up-and-coming lawyer for Parker and the vets, and he operated the online product business Parker had included to bring in extra money for the vets in serious jeopardy of becoming homeless. The money brought in would go to pay bills for some of the soldiers. Tony and Parker had put up their own money, and I'd contributed as well, but the homelessness among the soldiers was so pervasive that they had to get funding for homes for some of the soldiers who didn't have physical disabilities but were unemployable, because you couldn't see the things that plagued them, like alcoholism and mental disabilities that hadn't been diagnosed until it was too late. Therefore, Taylor worked hard on social media, raising the concern for donations on a GoFundMe page. Until they could get more donations, where they could provide more services, Parker would supplement most of it with his inheritance. Taylor had a lot to do, and when he added me and my needs to his schedule, it was amazing he could function, but he did, and very nicely too, and especially in bed. That alone was a job within itself. I could barely set up my booth, because I was enthralled at the way Tay looked. His body amazed me with his long legs and slim waist, and those blue jeans which fit his ass that I'd been previously fixated on, had my cock working overtime. I found myself getting possessive and jealous whenever he'd offered to help any of the guys, gay or straight. I soon discovered that I wanted him all to myself, even if he didn't take my shit. I admired that in him, because I wasn't an easy man to get along with. Because of my once status as a lieutenant in the Marines, I had been indeed someone to contend with. It had been baked into my nature that I ordered him around, and didn't realize it sometimes. Looking back, I should have been more considerate, and now I planned on making up for that time I was an out-and-out dick. What brought me to notice Taylor was his strength, and the ability to get past his previous mistakes, and gossip that was swirling in the coffee shop, and found its way to Wounded Inked. He raised his head, worked hard, and wasn't ashamed to do menial tasks that Parker had given him as a test, and he passed all the tests even with me. That to me was sexy, and it made Taylor more so, because he didn't realize how beautiful and desirable he was, and if he did know, he didn't flaunt his attractiveness. Whenever I saw him turn and smile at me, or strut over to help others, he was always attentive with me, if I needed him. However, I'd made it an issue for him not to help me, and let me do these things on my own, and he gave me the leeway to do that. And when I saw how the other men who were gay would call on him when he wasn't helping me, I'd make up some excuse to tell him that he didn't do something right. He'd get pissed and show me how wrong I was, and we'd be at each other's throat again. Those were the best days of my life, fucking with him and having him fight back. Sometimes he'd huff off and help out another artist and turn, bite that pretty bottom lip and glare at me, and that's when it hit me that I liked him in a different way, a sexual way. One day, he said to me that he was going to ask Parker to assign him to another vet, because I was nitpicking and carping about small things, which I admitted to him that I had done to get his attention. I went so far as to disclose to him one day, "I don't want to share you because you're mine." Tay duly replied with fire in his eyes, "I'm no one's slave and least of all not yours. You may have money, and more than I'll ever have, but you have no right to treat me like this. If you don't try to change, I'm asking Parker to reassign me, but if he doesn't do it then I'm quitting, and you can get someone else to take your shit, which I doubt." He placed his hands on his hips and stared at me, his chest moving up and down, and that was when I knew he was angry and meant what he'd said. I panicked. "You can't quit." "I won't let you," I mistakenly said. "Who died and left you, boss?" Tay barked and marched off to Parker's office. That was before Parker asked him if he would work that weekend, to which I'd earlier agreed to go to Grail's ranch just to have something to do, and not sulk and fall deeper into my depressive hole. I almost lost Tay. After being buried in my thoughts about Tay, and enjoying the feeling I'd experienced from meeting him, I noticed that Tay hadn't showed, and he hadn't come to my station to check whether I'd needed him to set up the colored ink. I realized that Parker had him as a captive audience, and then Tay strolled over to me as I was inking this dude who had more tattoos on his body than was necessary, and had asked for more than he had canvas to put them on. He had the good sense not to tattoo all of his face, just the neck area, and when Taylor stood near me I saw this dude's eyes light up. Tay didn't even notice him as the guy flexed his muscles, cleared his throat several times to get Tay's attention to look at his body. He must have thought that was all he had to do was to show Tay a hard body, and he'd be impressed and would fall all over him. I suspected that Tay had moved beyond that, after the problems he had trying to seduce someone with his body parts. I suspected he'd learnt a lesson I had. No one knew why or how two people found themselves attracted to the other, and it had nothing to do with looks. When Taylor stood around waiting for me, and looking at the tattoo and giving me his approval without talking, I said, "I'll be finished in 5 minutes, Tay, then we can go to lunch." Tay glanced over to me. "I'll wait for you in the lounge." And Taylor sashayed down the hallway. Then the dude looked up and said, "He's hot. Does he have a boyfriend?" "Only me." The guy who was a new customer blinked his eyes and bit the side of his bottom lip, as if he wanted to ask a question, but he made a statement instead. "But I knew all too well where he was going with that. Yes, a soldier and amputee wants a straight dude. I know all of this, but what does that have to do with me now, and with us being together? They cut off my legs, not my cock." I chuckled, putting on the final touches of ink on his muscular arm. I did hurry along the tattoo, so I could get the fuck out and be with my new love, my new boyfriend. That thought brought a smile to my once sour disposition. It had gotten old telling people, just because I didn't have legs didn't mean I'd stopped being a man. Or what the fuck did that have to do with me being with another person and having a sexual relationship, or any other kind of relationship? I just wanted to live without people making assumptions about me, and asking stupid questions, and worse yet, voicing them as if I wasn't present, or I had no feelings. As I completed the design, and gave him instructions on how to care for the tattoo, I gave him a mirror, and I could see how pleased he was from the expression of a gigantic smile, and his eyes brightened. "Would you like to go out sometimes, have a beer, let me pick your brain? I'm very busy now, and my boyfriend and I have a very active relationship, if you know what I mean. And I'm going to train for the Olympics." "I hear you. Wow, you are busy." And then the guy began talking, and telling me about his problems. I listened like a barber, or a bartender, and tried to keep my opinions to myself, and not give out any advice except, "Have you seen a physician?" "Not yet," he said, as he handed me a card to pay for the 3 hours it took to complete the intricate pattern of leaves and flowers. "Sometimes it's physical," I said, instructing him to insert his card. "But one thing for sure, getting involved with different men can't solve everything." He was a man in his late 40s or early 50s, and his libido had been affected by nature, and what advice he wanted from me was far above my expertise or pay grade, as they said. We shook hands, and when the muscle dude walked out, so did I.